All right, folks, Malkah Fleisher here in beautiful Judea. You know, things are so simple. This is our land. We should be fighting the bad guys. We shouldn't give away this land to our enemies because that'll just invite more attacks, more jihad. Israel should be strong. The Arabs will respect it. These things are simple, and yet sometimes so-called smart Jews don't understand it. The following is an interview that my wife Malkah Fleisher did on ILTV with somebody from the other side of the aisle who's offering the same old, and Malkah challenged him about it. So let's check out Malkah Fleisher on ILTV as she challenges the old, crusty, calcified ideas that don't seem to leave, and yet they come packaged in a kind of haughtiness as though this is the only way to go. This is the only way to go. No, it's not the only way to go. We need simple thinking. We need to get back to common sense, a strong Israel. Check out Malkah Fleisher on ILTV.
Marco Rubio came, prayed at the Western Wall, stood beside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in a joint press conference, inaugurated a controversial road in the city of David, and then flew on to Qatar. But the real question is, what did he achieve? Did he, behind the scenes, deliver a warning to Israel to rein in its campaign? Or did he give Netanyahu a green light to push forward, however Israel sees best? With a failed strike in Doha, hostages still in Hamas's captivity, and Israel facing mounting isolation, the stakes are high for the Jewish state. Tonight we're asking, is Israel strengthening its hands or playing a dangerous game with its international credit? In-house for what should be a lively debate are Malkah Fleisher, co-founder of the Jewish Women's Security Group in Judea, B'Yadayim Shelanu, and veteran journalist Dan Perry. Let's get started. All right, well, this is definitely a conversation that we need to have today. Marco Rubio flew out to Qatar this morning and left us, in Israel with a lot to think about, I think, in terms of what are our next steps. Tell me something. Hostages, the Iran pressure, relations with Qatar. In any of these topics, Dan, why don't you start? Do you think that he actually pushed the envelope?
I got to be honest and admit that we don't really know. Most politicians, most diplomats, perhaps even a definition of diplomacy, is such that you can't really necessarily go by what they say in public. And this particular U.S. administration is quite disciplined in not revealing too much of its cards, and when they're going to lie in public, they also lie in private to journalists. So what we end up having is a very massive smokescreen where we can only try to connect the dots. For example, clearly Rubio didn't lay down a law with Netanyahu that he can't go into Gaza because the day after Israel announces
or maybe he told him to go.
Into Gaza.
Isn't it possible?
It's conceivable. It looks like the U.S. administration is pretty close to the last significant force on earth that is willing to roll with what the Netanyahu government decides to do. Now, is that a line of credit without limit? I do not know. Is the U.S. position what I would have expected it to be, which is that Trump doesn't care about humanitarian issues and is highly utilitarian and even has fantastical notions about the U.S. owning Gaza, but he doesn't want a forever war, so it's got to be fast? I can't even guarantee that because the current Israeli strategy is headed towards something that is the opposite of fast. Netanyahu's apparent strategy is to occupy Gaza, establish a military administration, and basically deal with an insurgency for maybe years going forward.
So I want to have you respond to this, Malkah, because that makes sense that we don't really know. And on the other hand, it seems like there was some language that was dropped by the White House, whether it was, enough is enough or finish the job. This idea of not forever war. So how would you interpret the next steps that Israel should take and the steps that we took today, going further into Gaza in light of the visit by Rubio?
I think that the Rubio visit is really interesting, and I think that the policy that the Netanyahu administration is doing, like on the actual days that Rubio is here, are very interesting. First, Rubio came to inaugurate the Pilgrims Road in the city of David, Ir David, which is a part of Eastern Jerusalem, which is extremely historic, which has a lot of also value to the faith community. And Rubio, in his speech when he inaugurated this road, he talked all about that. And he talked about how America was based on values that were essentially given to the Jewish people by God. This is the kind of person that Rubio is. As he's here, in our country, Israel is blowing the smithereens out of Gaza City. Now, if you look backwards, if this had been a Biden administration official or an Obama administration official, you would not see anything like that. You would have seen total quiet on all the military fronts. It would have been, how do we hold it together so that the administration is happy? The opposite happened here. Israel almost made a display of force for Rubio, for the administration, as he's literally sitting here. And it's true that the Trump administration also is very tied into Qatar, which is complicated for us, right? It is definitely an issue.
And I want to talk about that, this Doha strike. Okay, now we don't really know who we killed, who we didn't kill, who we injured, who we didn't injure. It's not quite clear, but it does look like maybe we didn't have the success that we hoped for in assassinating all of the major leaders in Doha. Now, Netanyahu, of course, said that it was very successful. In fact, he stood on the stage with Rubio and he said, what do you mean? It was an excellent success because we delivered some kind of message to the world, except that it was then contradicted by Trump, who said, don't ever do it again. So then you have to ask the question, well, if we can't ever do it again and we didn't kill the leaders, how is it successful? How do you view this attempt that we took against the leaders in Doha, number one? And number two, where do you think this impacts the hostages?
So, first of all, I think there's success and then there's success. I do think it was a success. Was it a success in annihilating those leaders old school Nasrallah style? Did we totally cream them? We did not totally cream them. But we made a huge statement that no one can deny, which is two things. One, we see you, Qatar. With all due respect to how you're trying to normalize yourself by being suddenly a mediator after literally years upon years upon years of terror funding, and trying to play this diplomat now after you have literally been paying money to the people who took our hostages, offered them diplomatic protection in your country, put up a screen for them so that no one could touch them. So we outed Qatar, basically, and we said, listen, maybe you're sitting at the table with us, but we all know who you really are. That's thing number one. Thing number two is we made a statement. Again, I would have loved if we would have annihilated those Hamas leaders. Maybe we didn't. Not every military mission is a 100% success. But we basically said to them exactly what Netanyahu said in his press statement with Rubio, which is, you can run, you can hide, but we will get you.
Well, Dan, I need you to respond because I'm not so sure.
I'm itching to respond.
Yeah, please.
Malkah, no one outed anyone. The Hamas leaders were brazenly public about their presence in Qatar, and Qatar was completely open about hosting them. And there was an understanding that Israel had given that they were immune while they were in Qatar because Qatar was leading a mediation. Moreover, with the terror funding, believe me, I'm not naive about the double game being played by Qatar. But come on. Qatar gave money to the administration in Gaza, which was Hamas, for the last many years at the request of Netanyahu. Netanyahu wanted this to happen for not unreasonable, for two reasons. One reasonable, one completely ridiculous. The reasonable one was we don't want them to starve in Gaza because then that's bad, and it'll be also bad for security of Israel, one. Two, it's actually good that we have Hamas in Gaza. This was Netanyahu's idiotic position because that will somehow split the Palestinians. You have Hamas in Gaza, you have the PA in the West Bank, and this is good for business because with the Palestinians split, then we don't have to worry about negotiating with anyone because they appear to be weak. That backfired spectacularly. To now come say that Qatar was funding terror.
You know what? I want to tell you that I actually appreciate what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying, but I want to therefore tweak what I said, which is you're absolutely right, and I said it wrong. Qatar has always been openly what it is.
Yeah.
We are now showing Qatar we have changed. Okay, we are no longer the kind of state that's going to let you play us on both ends.
So let's discuss for a second what is the result of this message that Israel sent. We're showing Qatar that we're no longer going to.
But we are getting internationally condemned.
Because here's what happened. In fact, we're getting completely condemned. I think Israel might get away with it because the interest for continuing the process that will end the war is so huge, and Qatar's role in that is actually, ironically, so potentially significant that everyone has an interest in somehow looking the other way and maybe giving Qatar a little prize, and the prize already is happening today when Rubio is announcing an enhanced defense association between the U.S. and Qatar. So is that good for Israel? Not so sure. That's one result. The other result is that Trump said twice in recent days to Qatar publicly, Israel will never strike in Qatar again. So basically, it was one and done. And do I wish that they had killed all the Hamasniks in Gaza as a consequence of that one possible chance? Maybe I do. Maybe if that were happening, I'd be less critical of what appears to have been a reckless gamble. But what is pretty obvious is that rather than eliminating the idea of immunity, Israel's reinforced it. Because now the entire world community has put it on notice, including the Trump administration that will tolerate almost any Israeli skullduggery, has specifically said you'll never attack Qatar again. And I strongly doubt that Israel's going to attack in Turkey or in Egypt or anywhere else, because even though sometimes you get the feeling that there is no limit to the Netanyahu administration's cynicism and recklessness, I actually think there is a limit.
I think it's like really interesting that you talk about recklessness when it's really the lack of action that has led us to the point that we are today. The fact that Netanyahu is finally taking action, like shocking action, like unprecedented action, is very refreshing for the Israeli people, and I think it's really sending a message. And I would like to say, like, regarding condemnation, you know, it's people from your camp who've been talking about condemnation for like the last 40 years that have squeezed us into this corner in which we feel we can't respond to terror threats. Now we're finally responding to terror threats, and yeah, it's very messy. We made ourselves a horrible bed, and now we have to clean it up, and I'm glad that we're finally doing it. You know, if we were sitting here worrying about condemnation, we would never get anything done. We would never have responded to Hamas. We would never have responded to Lebanon. We would never have responded to Syria, and we certainly wouldn't have responded to Iran. I do not think that this is these are bad moves on the part of.
I want to actually.
That requires a
Okay,
response.
go for it.
Israel's been fighting terror for the past 50, 60, 70, 100 years, basically.
Israel has been staving off terror. It has not been fighting terror.
They call it mowing the lawn.
Alongside terror its whole entire life. And the people of Israel are tired of it. And they want, you know, we're probably going to talk about what's going to be the end, where's the end game of the war, and it cannot be that we perpetually do the same things over and over again. The world is not black and white. That has been empirically proven to be a horrible failure.
May I?
You may.
This black and white idea that they've only been doing little and now they're doing much, it isn't quite that binary. Israel's been doing a lot, a hell of a lot, for many, many years. Israel now may be going further in some cases, and some of it is wise. The world is complex. The Hezbollah operation I would have wanted to see many years ago. The Iran operation I would have wanted to see many years ago. Many things I would do more radically than the government. The war in Gaza specifically is a strategic cul-de-sac and a shocking case of idiocy.
And it seems that even Rubio, when he was here, said that he does not believe, though, that Hamas is going to disarm and that it's going to surrender. So then, in this case, Dan, if the war is you know, something that we can't win militarily, or we should stop fighting militarily,
I think we've already won.
I will say, I think that in some ways you're right, because tactically we've definitely annihilated enough of Hamas that they no longer have the power to put our security at risk.
Or to do an October 7th.
For sure. Right, October 7th put our security at risk, 100%. On the other hand, and Hamas is an ideology, so you're never going to wipe out an ideology. We're not going to wake up the day after the war anyway and believe. I agree. No, I'm agreeing with you. The day after the war, no one's going to wake up and say, oh, nobody wants to kill us anymore. That's not going to be the case. Hamas ideology will exist. So in that sense, you're right. We have won. And we still have 48 hostages there. Hamas is not going to give them back. They're not going to surrender. They're not going to give them back at the negotiating table. You think they will?
I know they will. Hamas generally, unlike democratic governments, sometimes speaks the truth in public. And it was clear from the beginning that Hamas's position from the beginting of the war was we'll return all the hostages in exchange for an end to the war.
Then explain how when the last agreement came out, where they said that 48 hostages come back on day one and we'd have a ceasefire and be done. Hamas said we can't find all the hostages.
Hamas is on record saying to the extent that they can find all the hostages, and yes, there is some question about a few that might be held by Islamic Jihad or by gangs, but
or buried under the rubble,
sure. But to the extent that they can, Hamas's position is they will return the hostages in exchange for credible guarantees that the war ends and it will not attack the day after. Now, for a considerable part of this war, even people like me would not have given them that guarantee, because that gives them a victory narrative, and they're going to claim victory because look, we're still standing. We're standing on top of smoldering ruins, but but we're still standing, and that's a victory. And idiots all around the region would buy it, and it would strengthen jihadism, and I don't want that. But there comes a point where it flips, and you say, okay, enough is enough. At this point, there's diminishing returns. We have devastated Hamas's actual army, and what Israel's looking at now is an insurgency in an area that it occupies full of hostile civilians that is likely to last for many, many years. Rubio says he gets that. I'm not surprised. The U.S. tried for a decade.
Dan, they just
finish.
claimed.
For a decade, the U.S. failed to suppress the Iraqi insurgency that exists to this day in the form of the Shiite militias in Iraq. And the U.S. completely failed to suppress the insurgency in Afghanistan for 20 years. Israel doesn't want to enter that paradigm. There are other ways to get Hamas to step aside, given the degree to which it has been diminished, given the pressure that will be coming at them internally once reconstruction of Gaza is conditioned on them taking the next step and not only handing the keys to the PA, which they've agreed to do, but also handing their weapons. It's going to be tough. There's going to be tremendous pressure that needs to be applied. But at this point, the military pressure has, as I said, diminishing returns. The result is going to be, the army has said, at least 100 and possibly hundreds of soldiers dead, the sacrificing of the remaining 20 or so living hostages, and an expensive and messy, years-long occupation of a hostile population that will see Israel increasingly isolated in the world. I know many viewers want to support the government no matter what. It makes you feel patriotic. This particular case is idiocy, and that's why, and this is my last point, Malkah, the people of Israel aren't impressed and happy. About 75% want to end the war now. And that includes the security establishment in Israel. That includes the business
nobody likes a war, Dan. Everybody wants to end a war, but that's not how war is.
They would end the war now.
You can't look at a war and go, I'm tired. We got to end this war.
They would do that.
Just a few days ago, Jews were murdered in Jerusalem, and you're talking to me about believing Hamas, believing the words that they say, and like, oh, they'll give us the hostages if we just give them the pragmatic solution forward. It's like, you've held the country hostage for 50 years with these ideas, and the Jewish people are ready to fight now for a different Israel and a different Middle East. We are not going back to a Gaza that looks like it did 2 years ago.
Malkah, I have to be able to respond.
We can't do that. You've been talking for 5 minutes without stopping. So now I'm going to say something, which is that these are old, tired, sooty, square things that you're talking about. The way that you talk about Hamas like they're people to believe. Oh, Hamas, they said if they would get guarantees to end the war, well, they'll do it. And
I did not say that.
Them.
I'm not saying they're people
of
people
Israel
to believe.
Are tired of the way that this situation is being looked at, and we are refreshed.
So are you prepared for a 5-year occupation of Gaza, an insurgency in which thousands died?
I am prepared for Israel to take its rightful place in this region as a protector, as a responsible party. I'm not going to kid ourselves and think to ourselves, these are not words.
A multi-year occupation of Gaza.
This war has cost us 300 billion shekels.
Yeah.
If we didn't have to fight a war like this and we used that money instead to take control over our lands, whether it be Gaza, whether it be Judea and Samaria, we would be saving a lot of money and we'd be saving a lot of lives. Jews are still being killed in this land for being Jews. And you have offered no solutions to that.
Have you noticed that Israel controls Jerusalem?
They said
no, I didn't say believe Hamas.
But they said.
Okay, Malkah, I want to stop you, please.
It was in Jerusalem. Israel controls Jerusalem. Right? Do you think Israel's stupid actions in Gaza that are bringing international isolation to a country that needs the world because it's export-oriented?
Before this, we were big.
Part of the strategic stupidity of the current situation is this arrogant indifference to the entirety of world opinion. Okay? Israel needs the European Union. Israel's economy depends on exports, which account for a third of its economy. Its economy is the reason why Israel has a qualitative edge over the Arabs that have enabled it to survive and, yes, to stave off aggression against it. You're going to throw all this away by supporting any military action, however boneheaded it is and however costly it's going to be. And now you bring the attack in Jerusalem last week, which Israel fully controls, as a reason why Israel should occupy Gaza and saddle itself with a military administration over 2 million people, which will bring never-ending cost in treasure and lives. A little bit of strategy. The people of Israel don't want this. They're not happy with this. The overwhelming majority of Israel opposes this. The quarter that actually still supports Bibi includes most of those are Haredim who refuse to serve in the army. This is an abomination.
You live in a bubble. You don't understand what people are feeling. The people of Israel are ready to fight until success. Does it happen to be that our policy in Gaza is unclear to the people? And does it happen to be that I myself and you yourself do not know what the end goals are of this administration?
Well, I think Netanyahu gave us a 5-point plan.
Okay, we don't understand yet where this is really headed. But it happens to be that we have not taken full control over this.
May I make a prediction?
And the terror organizations understand that there's division in the country, and every time that happens, they exploit it. The fact that you talk about Haredim, the people of Israel have showed up overwhelmingly for Miluim and have showed up for army service, and the fact that you would bring that in is so ridiculous.
Really?
What does that have to do with anything? You think that the Haredim are the only people who support this war?
The tiny minority that continues to support the war refuse to fight in the war. May I make a prediction?
You may each make one prediction. We have 2 minutes left, so with 30 seconds down, and also you with 30
The next
seconds.
election is held October 2026. Netanyahu knows he can't go to elections continuing the war. Therefore, at some optimal point, just before those elections, he will declare what I'm declaring now. Israel has done all that it can do. It has done enough, and it has to do a deal to get back the hostages. But between now and that point, which will be more politically opportune for Netanyahu to make that declaration, many people will die, including Israelis, and if anyone cares, maybe tens more thousands Palestinians. It is a moral abomination.
Malkah responds. Final comments.
The vast majority of people who hold Dan's opinions in Israel today are his age and older. The people of Israel, the younger generation, is more and more right-wing, more and more army-serving, more and more ready to take control over Judea and Samaria, more and more ready to stand strong in the Middle East as a strong regional force. And my prediction is that we will continue along a bumpy ride, because that's how it is for the Jewish people. We continue on a bumpy ride, but that we will continue to head in the right direction as Israel continues to make the realizations that it cannot be the old country that's victimized all the time, but instead it has to be a leader in this region and in the world.
Every single poll says otherwise, without exception. And I'm talking about 75% of the people that agree with me on the issue of the continuation of the war.
Everyone wants an end to war. Nobody likes war, but we want victory before the end of war.
No, not generally want the end of war. Specifically, they don't want this current intensification of the war in Gaza. They want to bring this war, which is now 2 years old. And I remind you that Netanyahu said in early 2024 that we are a step away from victory, but it wasn't opportune for him politically to actually end the war then, because his coalition would have fallen apart.
That's very
I'm not going to be able to allow you to respond. Unfortunately,
I'm not the cynic Netanyahu is.
Unfortunately, we are at the end of the time that we have today. This just went by so fast, and there is so much more that we need to debate. But I really want to thank you, Dan Perry and Malkah Fleisher, for being here tonight. For more analysis from Israel and the Middle East, tune into our 24/7 streaming channel and download the ILTV app. You can also catch more deep interviews with leading voices twice weekly on the ILTV podcast, available on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Ayan Hoffman. Thanks for watching, and have a pleasant evening.
That was Malkah Fleisher on ILTV, squaring off with the old guard and the old way of thinking, which wants us to give up our land, be weak, stop the war, do everything for the hostages, and basically lose and make that sound like it's smart. It's not smart. What's smart is to be strong. Okay, it's smart, it's simple, it's down to earth, it's common sense, and it's what the Torah wants from us as well. I hope that you love what we do here on the channel. If you do, then please like, subscribe, comment, become a member, and check out our web store of cool Yishai Fleisher TV stuff, Land of Israel, Judea stuff. And you can also support us through buymeacoffee.com/Yishai, buymeacoffee.com/Yishai, or check out our projects at fightforisrael.org, fightforisrael.org. God bless you from the beautiful land of Judea, where Jewish strength is back. It's cool, it's the right way to be, and it's godly. God bless you wherever you are, and shalom.